Hi everybody, welcome to Vijayasur Foundation. My name is Manoj Swaminathan and today we are going to learn about the country specific pharmacovigilance requirements. So let me clarify one thing that I am not going to talk about the requirements based on the type of the country. I'm not going to do that, but I would give you some idea about how regulations differ among the countries. Okay, so that's something which I'm going to do this. So let's get started. So there are almost 197 countries in the world, and this list is quite dynamic, right? So every year you would find some new country getting added, right? So the first category of country or countries is those with no published regulations. Now, when I say no published regulations, is there may not be any website where you can get hold of the regulations, or somebody from the country would also say that there are no regulations in my country. So, in that case, we would assume that there are no published regulations in that country. But then, still, you should not be surprised if the regulatory agency comes for an inspection. So, that's something which still can happen. The second country or the second category is with regards to those countries with which have got some published requirements. Okay, and most of these countries would require only the clinical trial related adverse events, that is the SAEs and the SUSARs, right? So this is what they would require, and most of the times you would find that the requirements are unclear. You wouldn't understand, or you will be finding it difficult to determine whether the requirements are for clinical trials or for post marketing. And at times there may be some published regulations as well in these countries, but still it will not be very clear. Okay, so this is the way. And but then yes, uh, again should not be surprised if these country regulatory agencies come for inspection. That is also a possibility. And the final category is those countries with full set of requirements. So primarily the developed countries, or I would say even including the ICH countries. So these countries have got full set of requirements, starting from case processing to say aggregate safety reporting, risk management, everything, quality management system. And yes, these are the countries, or these country regulatory agencies frequently inspect companies. Okay, so that way we had divided all the 197 countries into category 1, category 2, and category 3. Now let us look into each of these requirements in detail. The first one is with regards to the individual case safety reports. That also includes those from the clinical trials. Okay, I'm not demarcating this uh, for convenience. So it is both. So if any adverse event report you receive, so that has to be processed and submitted. Okay. Then the second set is with regards to the aggregate safety reporting. So this can again be during the clinical trials where you have something called as a DSUR, and also it can happen during the post marketing phase, which can include the PSUR and the PBUR, right? So, or even the PADERs in the United States. So that's about the aggregate safety reporting. And in aggregate safety reporting, there are some countries which only require the line listings, say 6 monthly or quarterly line listings. So that can also happen. Apart from this, the third requirement I would say is with regards to the responsible person for pharmacovigilance. So it can be the QPPV, the qualified person for pharmacovigilance, or the local responsible person for pharmacovigilance, and so on. The third set of requirements are with regards to the PSMF. So what is PSMF? It is the Pharmacovigilance System Master File. Okay, Pharmacovigilance System Master File. Now some countries require this to be maintained and some of them do not. Sometimes it will not be present in the regulations and still they may expect. So that is also a possibility. And then the final set of requirements are with regards to the established pharmacovigilance procedures. that would include signal and risk management. Also, companies would need to have a proper quality management system, and also with regards to inspecting or auditing, okay, wherein the regulatory agency may have their guidelines for inspections, and also they may have some suggestions about the auditing procedures in the various organizations. So that is also a possibility. So in this manner, the requirements can be segregated. Okay. Now you would say that there are some more things which I have not covered. For example, labeling related safety and those stuff. But then yes, but then the most important ones I have covered. Now, how about the individual case safety reports? So this is primarily divided into serious and non-serious adverse events, or non-serious and serious adverse event reports, okay, or case safety reports. Now, when you talk about the serious adverse events, so it can be from the clinical trials, or it can be from the post-marketing scenario, right? So before the approval and after the approval. Now, if it is related to clinical trials, then you would call it as SUSAR, right? Suspected unexpected serious adverse reactions, or you would call it SAE, serious adverse event. And then in terms of post marketing, we have learned about the seriousness criteria, right? The various seriousness criteria that includes medically significant, life threatening, fatal, disability, congenital anomalies, right? So, all those things we have learned. So, that way, the serious adverse events only would need to be reported. And again, with regards to the labeling, right? So, labeled, unlabeled, or listed, unlisted, right? Or expected, unexpected. Based on that, countries may require the reporting, and that too, they may have some timelines. For example, if it is, say, fatal or and life-threatening case, and especially from clinical trials, uh, we may need to report them in 7 calendar days. 7 calendar days, so quickly, right? And the other serious adverse events, uh, which may be considered related, would need to be submitted within 15 calendar days. So that is the way this works. So that is exactly the reason that we learned about day zero, 4 minimum criteria. And why is day zero important? Because you can then calculate the 7th day and the 15th day, and before that you can undertake the submissions, right? So primarily, the most of the country regulatory agencies would require only the serious adverse events. However, there are also some regulatory agencies that want the non-serious adverse events. Now, non-serious, it's quite obvious, right? The definition itself would be that any case report which is not serious, right? So this might need to be reported within 30 calendar days. There are some countries which require within 30 calendar days. One country which I can remember is India, which requires all the non-serious adverse event reports within 30 calendar days. Then there are some countries which require adverse event reports, the non-serious ones, within 60 or 90 calendar days. Typically, European Union would require non-serious adverse event reports within 90 calendar days. Okay. Now again, these can be applicable to, say, the device-related adverse events, then even the cosmetics-related adverse event reports. So those may have different timelines for reporting, and also for the veterinary adverse events, right? Even that would require reporting. So I'm not demarcating anything, but then you should understand that it all depends on the seriousness criteria. That some countries require only the serious adverse events, and some countries require only the non-serious adverse event reports. Now let's go to the next part, and that is about aggregate safety reporting. Now I got something like QHAND. So what do these mean? Q means quarterly. Okay. Some countries require aggregate safety reports to be submitted on a quarterly basis. One example is that of United States, where you have a new license or new ANDA or NDA approval. Initially, you would need to submit the aggregate safety reports or PADERs on a quarterly basis. Okay. Then H stands for 6 monthly or half yearly. Okay, half yearly or 6 monthly. where you would need to submit reports on a 6 monthly basis. Uh, One country which I can remember is India, where you need to submit the aggregate safety reports on a 6 monthly basis for the initial 2 years. Okay. Then A. Now it's very easy, right? A stands for annual, right? So in some countries, you need to report or submit aggregate safety reports on an annual basis. One country which I can remember is United States. There are some more, like say Australia, Canada, which would require aggregate safety reports to be submitted on an annual basis. Okay. Then finally D. So what does D mean? D means at the discretion of the regulatory agency. So they may decide. Okay, they may have their own calendar, and they would need submissions based on this. So it can be say 1.5 year, or say 2 years, or 5 years. Say once in 10 years, once in 12 years, once in 14 years. It can be anything that they would require an aggregate safety report to be submitted. Sometimes they would even need it say 6 monthly, and for some products, and annually for some products. So it is totally on the discretion of the regulatory agency. Okay. So this is the way how it works. Now let's talk about the qualified person for pharmacovigilance, or the local or the responsible person for pharmacovigilance. So this is primarily that you might require a QPPV at the regional level. Examples are European Union, that you can have one QPPV for the entire European Economic Area, right? So all the 27, 28 countries, you can have one single QPPV. And the other is about country specific or local, right? So this may also be required, where apart from the regional, you may also need to have local QPPV. Some examples for regional, I have one more example, that is Gulf countries, where you would also need to have one common QPPV for the entire Gulf region. And when we talk about country specific or local, there are some countries, for example, India, you need a local, that is a pharmacovigilance officer in charge for India. And you also have the concept of local QPPV. So that can even be applicable to European Union, and even applicable to the Gulf countries, where apart from the uh, person for the at the regional level, you would also need to have country specific people. Okay, this is the way it will work. Now, let's go to the next part, and that is PSMF. That is the Pharmacovigilance System Master File. Uh, so this is a concept that originated in the European Union, and this is similar to what we learned with regards to the QPPV, where it might be required at the regional level. Two examples which I can remember is, one is the European Union. You can have one PSMF for the entire European Economic Area, and even for the Gulf countries, you can have a common uh, PSMF for the entire Arab region. So you can do that as well. Okay. Now, there are some countries which would also require country specific PSMF. The classic example that I can remember is the Arab countries or the Gulf countries, where apart from the PSMF, you also need to have a PSSF, that is Pharmacovigilance Subsystem File, PSSF file. Now, for the entire Arab countries or Gulf region, you would have a PSMF, and country specific, you would have a PSSF. Then some examples of local pharmacovigilance system master files include, I can remember of is India, where you would need a PVMF, or a pharmacovigilance system master file, or pharmacovigilance master file, PVMF. So that is very typical for India. Okay. So like this, there are some more countries, almost 60, 70 countries globally now require a PSMF to be maintained. Now, apart from this, there is also a concept emerging, that is about the global QPPV and the global PSMF. So there are some companies which try to do this, where they would maintain a, or they would have a global QPPV, and they would even have a global PSMF. Now, the advanced pharmacovigilance requirements. Now, what do these mean? This means, first is the quality management system. First is that the company should have a proper QMS in place. That includes everything, starting from the SOPs uh, to even the advanced procedures like change controls, corrective actions, preventive actions, deviations, and so on. So everything, and even they need to audit the distributors, and they should have distributors SDAs in place and everything. So that is quality management system. The next will be about the risk management. So this can be risk management plans for their products, or it can even be the REMS for the products. So REMS is risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. So that's the RMP counterpart for the United States. Then signal management. There are many countries that mandate that every company should undertake signal management. So that is also a possibility. Okay, signal management for all their products. Then finally, regulatory inspections, where some agencies would have their guidelines on regulatory inspections, how frequently they will inspect you, and what are their expectations, and something on the documentation, and so on. Sometimes even about the categorizations of the observations, critical, major, minor, or it can even be something different like in the United States. So it can be that way as well. Okay, so this is the way it will work. Now, um, I also wanted to explain or give you some information about the WHO PIDM. Okay, what is this? This is the WHO Program for International Drug Monitoring, and this is something which was initiated by the WHO, and this was for all the individual countries to benefit. Okay, so they tried to harmonize the pharmacovigilance requirements, wherein all countries would also report to the WHO. So that is the way this was initiated. So it is an international collaboration with the goal of ensuring timely identification of suspected safety problems in the medicinal products. So very nice initiative. Now this initiative is more than 65 years old, and more than 170 members have enrolled into it. Now, when I say members, it is countries. So in the first slide, what I had told you that there are almost 197 countries globally, and out of 197, almost 170 are members. Does that mean all these countries have proper pharmacovigilance requirements in place? No. Why? Because these 170 members may be even associate members. So there can be a full or associate membership. So in case of full, yes, they would have proper pharmacovigilance requirements, everything in place. But then you would also have associate members which are in the process of developing their pharmacovigilance system. Again, WHO does all the hand holding. They have got all the resources available on their websites, and also they provide additional trainings and so on. Okay, so this is also something you should know. So let's summarize what we have learned so far. First thing is this, there can be a country specific variance with regards to pharmacovigilance requirements, or that can be a variance at the regional level. So that can happen. The regional level, I gave you the examples of European Medicines Agency, right? And also the Arab requirements or the Gulf requirements. Then in many countries, the guidance is unclear. So it's not very clear on what they expect. But then at the same time, they may even come for inspections. So not all the countries undertake inspection, but then at the same time, this is something which is quite dynamic. This keeps on changing, and you wouldn't expect an inspection from some country, and they only reach out to you and say that we want to inspect you. So those things do happen in the pharmacovigilance arena. Okay. Then we also have the concept of WHO PIDM, right? So that is something which we learned, wherein they are trying to harmonize everything, the requirements, and also we have something like ICH, which is the International Council for Harmonization. Now ICH also does lot of harmonization activity, where they would prepare some templates or guidelines which can be used by all of the ICH members. So that is also a possibility. Okay. Then finally, please remember that the regulations are dynamic. Okay, very dynamic, because these keep on changing with time. And what is the solution for all this? The solution is that you should have a proper regulatory intelligence process in place. You need to frequently monitor the regulatory agency websites, try to network with people in those countries, and try to find out if regulations are changing in those countries or something is emerging in that country, so that you can be compliant with regards to the pharmacovigilance requirements in those countries. Right? So if you are commercializing your product in that country, you should know what has changed in that country. That okay, there is some country which has now started requesting for adverse event reports, and you are not aware. So this can land you in trouble, right? So during the next inspection, you may have a problem. So that way, you should have an efficient regulatory intelligence process in place where you can monitor all the activities, right? So I trust you found this session to be useful and interesting. Please remember that the pharmacovigilance requirements are quite dynamic. This change with time. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, comments, or even suggestions. Thank you.